Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. I hope everybody is doing well today.
Yeah, hello there. We got some interesting stuff to talk about here.
Yes, and this one is going to be fun, and it's going to be almost more like a live in some sense because I might be jumping around a lot. But there's a lot to get over. And so, often I'll see a comment and then it gets me thinking, boy, we got to go deeper into that because, somebody will say, well, this is the truth, dump, and that's it. And it's the truth in their mind because they're looking at it from one point of view. But the truth is convoluted, and it's been so convoluted on purpose to basically make it so we can't figure it out.
Right, and when I see someone in the comments questioning this, I'm just kind of grateful because at least they're searching. They're not exactly sure about their belief system. So maybe they're still looking for something that makes a little more sense, and even if they don't agree with us, that's okay. They're still searching for truth.
Yeah, exactly. And as I've shared with you guys, my search started at a very early age. It goes back to when my brother died when I was 5, and I just had to know where he went. So, I had basically kind of an out of body experience, recognized that we're not the body, we're much more than the body, although we are in a body at the moment, partly part of our consciousness anyway, as we are multidimensional. And then I read the Bible cover to cover at 11. And have really torn into every philosophy, every religion I possibly can from every different angle, as well as studying the Western mystery tradition, modern magic, ceremonial magic, chaos magic, Wicca, you name it, I've studied it. Have also not just studied it, but I have tried to delve into it, without delving into calling up anything dark or evil. Because I certainly wouldn't want to do that. I don't see the sense in that. And a lot of Solomon magic, per se, and we could break that down into soul and moon, sun and moon, yin and yang magic, right? Is the magic of calling up specific spirits and all. So there are those that are absolutely completely convinced that they know exactly what's going on. It's all the fallen angels, the watchers. It's all the the mixing of that seed with humanity. As you see here, the whole earth has been ruined by the fallen angel Azazel, or Semyaza, or some of the others that are named in the book of the Enoch, which talks about the watchers, those that are watching. Interesting enough, when we get to the story of Betty Andreasson and her abduction experience, in which she sees humans in test tubes, all different types of humans from all over in test tubes, as well as things that appear to be part human and part not human, almost like, hybrids of sorts. Again, in test tubes, being cultivated and growing, some in like stasis. And she sees these tall Nordic looking beings, very much like what we see described as the beings that live over in Mount Shasta, for instance, in Adama, and, those Lemurian beings that went when Lemuria fell, so to speak. They went inside the earth. So, we had the legends of Agartha and Shambhala, and we also have the Nordic Palladian aliens as well. And be careful with, putting them all in one basket, so to speak, as well, because there are also the Nords that have been under the control of the reptilians and the Greys, which, were the ones that helped Hitler also. So it's very, very convoluted, and there's so many different cast of characters and players. Depending on if you're only looking at it from one particular tradition, then you have blinders on. There's no way around it. If you feel like there's only one tradition that has all the truth, then you've put blinders on and you're only going to see a part of the story.
Mm-hmm. And our belief systems can hinder us sometimes, but once you start to realize that there really are different beings running the show, and maybe things are not as though you were told. Maybe everything you've been reading and writing is, given to you by someone who has an agenda.
Oh yeah, and it's so interpenetrated into every aspect of our system, the agendas and the secret societies. So when Betty Andreasson asks this gray alien, "Who are you?" He answers and says, "We're the Watchers." And wow, that's a big statement right there, because that's very quote unquote biblical. Well, it's not really so much biblical. It's more pseudepigraphal. It comes from the book of Enoch. Again, there's tiny little references to certain things in the Bible, and then you find more in some books that are not in the Bible. And so many people believe, because the book of Enoch was not accepted in the Bible, but yet was quoted by apostles. It was definitely in circulation, that it must be absolutely true, and this has to be exactly how things went down. And we've talked about it before. The word angel, is actually coming from a Greek word which means messenger. So, in that sense, these are messengers. But there are beings that we would call angels of that sort, of a very, very high vibrational frequency, part of the Vedic kingdom, actually at the top of the Vedic kingdom.
Yeah, and there's several, that we could consider angels, guides, helpers, and they're there to help get us through this, because we've been kind of given a very difficult mission to come here and change things around and set things straight, and they are trying to give us guidance if only we'll be open to it.
So there are beings that we've used the term angels for that are actually flesh and blood, at least can take flesh and blood bodies, but there's also angelic beings that are exactly what we think of when we think of angelic beings from the traditional standpoint of basically beings of pure light, pure manifestation of a very, very high realm. And we're going to get into the archangels in a separate video shortly, because their energy is exceedingly powerful and potent.
It really is, yeah. So there's things that we need to just take a closer look at.
So we have the books of Enoch, which, tell these stories of these beings. And it's interesting, too, you really got to look all around, and you really have to look at different copies. And this is one of the things when I started really my biblical studies in depth, it was when we didn't have the internet. Al Gore had not invented the internet yet, children. Yeah, sure. But yet I would compare copies, because I had dozens of different Bibles, and I would go out and read one line that I thought was pertinent, one prophecy in particular, and I would compare it from one Bible to another. Nowadays, we could do it all online in a second and just click, okay, let's see how it reads in this way, okay, King James, okay, Modern English, okay, NIV, okay, to see where things maybe don't line up perfectly, maybe have been mistranslated and all. Like there's one author I was just reading that was saying that, and he had a PDF of the entire book, is that it's goes back 2,500 years BC, which is not the case. What we have is basically anywhere from the 3rd century BC fragments up to the 1st century thereabouts. And we have to really look at it for what it is and how we got it as well. So in modern times, we got the Dead Sea Scrolls. And let me jump over there first, over here. And you see this is an actual depiction of, that's an actual photo of what we got. And so, of course, you could see that it's, it's kind of a mess right now because it's kind of in pieces. But, there's different fragments here. And here you see one of the most important apocryphic works of the Second Temple period is Enoch. According to the biblical narrative, Genesis 5:21 through 24, Enoch lived only 365 years. Only, people are saying? Well, that's far less than the other patriarchs in the period before the flood. I mean, why 365? Well, how many days are there in a year? There's 365 days in a year. So we look to see that there's other symbolism going on as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things going on. And then, how do we pick this apart? How do we find the truth in it?
And Enoch walked with God, then he was no more, for God took him. So, some have taken that statement to say that he was abducted, taken up on a spaceship, and is gone. And others could look at it and say, well, Enoch ascended. And then we see from other legends, which comes out of the mystical tradition of Judaism, that Enoch, has actually turned into a great archangel. And when you look to the Vedic Hindu line of thinking, humans can turn into the devas. And what are the devas? Devas are godlike beings. And so we see there's actually agreement in there that the being that might inhabit a human body today can at some point ascend into something that would be much more, quote unquote, godlike. And, when we look at the Jewish legends again of Enoch becoming Metatron and Elijah Sandalphon, two of the greatest archangels, some say the greatest archangels, even higher than the four archangels, although that's hard to fathom when you feel the energy and power of the four archangels. And then there's actually some places that list it as 7, others as 9. It's interesting, though. It's all interesting because things can be taken different ways. The original language of most of the work was, in all likelihood, Aramaic, which is an early Semitic language. Although the original version was lost in antiquity, portions of a Greek translation were discovered in Egypt, and quotations were known from the Church Fathers. The discovery of the text from a Qumran cave, number 4, has finally provided parts of the Aramaic original. In the fragment exhibited here, humankind is called on to observe how the unchanging nature follows God's will. The Book of Enoch is pseudepigraphal. That's a work that claims to be by a biblical character, but they don't really think Enoch wrote it. It's, supposed to be giving us a narrative of events in the ancient history. The Book of Enoch was not included in either the Hebrew or the most Christian biblical canons, but could have been considered a sacred text by sectarians. The original Aramaic version was lost until the Dead Sea Scroll fragments were discovered. So, going back over here, we see James Bruce, and that name might ring familiar with some of you guys, the Scotsman who discovered the devil. Scottish explorer James Bruce, who lived between 1730 and 1797-4. Okay, I think they got a little typo there. 1797, I believe, set out to find the ancient text to strengthen his faith, right? So they say what he found was the devil. The more austere a faith, the more sensationalized its taboos seem to become. The renowned Scottish explorer and scholar James Bruce set out to find a book he hoped would preserve the secret of ancient rites. He returned instead with an ancient Ethiopian depiction of the original of the very source of evil itself, the devil. Denounced by the early church fathers and preserved solely, save for fragments, within the ancient Ethiopian tongue of Ge'ez, the Book of Enoch offers us a tale no establishment of the time wished to see credited, rooted in esoteric Jewish thought. The Book of Enoch suggests that the hated and feared figure of the devil itself may once have been humanity's very own ally and mentor. Interesting. At a time in which Britain was involved in lengthy territorial conflicts with the Spanish state, James Bruce traveled extensively, always studying the native cultures and artifacts of those around him. For a time, he was the British consul in Algiers, spending several years pursuing his interest in antiquarian relics and ancient ruins. It is possible it was at this point that Bruce learned of the significance of the missing Book of Enoch, for, upon completion of his role in Algiers, he took it upon himself to set out in search of the Blue Nile, the true Nile of the ancients. Yet, despite his scientific ambitions, Bruce also had a more arcane agenda, one rooted at the very tradition of Western Christianity and the mythology of its central antagonist. Passing through Alexandria, which had a great library which was destroyed, and if we had the knowledge of Alexandria now, it all would be very, very clear, but it was destroyed on purpose to hide our true history. Thebes and Cairo, to name just a few places. Bruce arrived in the former Ethiopian capital of Gondor in 1770, and those of you of Tolkien, well, people that enjoy the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit, you will be very familiar with the land of Gondor. That's where the king comes from, Gondor, right? Aragorn. Yes. We see how these things have been like so integrated into our mind. From Gondor, he traveled through Abyssinia, ostensibly in search of the Blue Nile, while also searching out the Book of Enoch. A member of the Canongate Kilwinning Lodge, Masonic Lodge. So in other words, he was a Freemason. Bruce's reasoning for his comprehensive study of the ancient Ethiopian language, Ge'ez, and his travels to a region noted for its dislike of outsiders are both questions that can only be addressed by what he had hoped to find within that ancient texts. Equated with the Egyptian deity Thoth by some Freemasons, Enoch was considered the founder of the written language. It is thought that part of James Bruce's motive in uncovering the ancient text was due to his belief that Enoch was, in some way, the author of the secrets that the Masons believed they were the true inheritors of. Finding Enoch's words would validate their own beliefs. Instead, Bruce found himself confronted with a notion far more perplexing. Whilst we have become accustomed to the devil as the fall guy for all that's bad in the world, he is a convenient excuse for the theology argument of why God always allows evil to happen. And what we see in the Book of Enoch is that the original story contained no antagonist other than God himself. It's not surprising then that the Book of Enoch, with its narrative implying that the source of wisdom originated instead from those who the Hebrew deity attempted to destroy during the flood, never found a place in canonized Christianity and was left unpublished during Bruce's lifetime. To have made public such a story would have been to equate the development of culture, of creativity, not with Christ and the institution of the church, but rather to Azazel and the angels who turned away from God. Such an idea was anathema to both the religious and social climate of the time. This tale would have caused massive unrest of a kind that few authorities were willing to entertain. As such, despite the richness of its imagery, the story of the Book of Enoch continues to remain a footnote in the histories detailing life and times of this most inspiring of Scottish adventurers. Thoughts?
Yeah, so as we're reading this, I was just thinking it would be difficult to put something like this out in the public for people to read and understand. But also at the same time, whenever I'm looking at something and the word Freemason comes up or something like that, then I have to go back and kind of re-question everything all over again. It's like, okay, this is just stuff that they want me to know. How much of this is true? And I think everybody goes through this weighing process once they start to awaken.
Most definitely. And when you look at them, it's very interesting. The notable Bruce family, how many of you guys remember Robert the Bruce? You guys remember Braveheart? You remember who, after Braveheart is put to death, drawn and quartered, then Robert the Bruce, leads a rebellion. And actually there was a recent movie done by the guy that plays Captain Kirk in Star Wars, and the more recent ones. That was actually really good. It was a good movie. Also involved in the Jacobite Rebellion as well. Interesting. Also ties to the East India Trading Company. Following his school education, Bruce attended Edinburgh University, where he studied law. He had no desire to practice, however, and his adventurous nature led him to aspire to a career with the East India Trading Company. Now, why do I say that? Because this was a corporate world back then. Already the corporations were how things were being run and controlled and manipulated. And this company is one in which is heavily, very opposite of heavenly, influenced and controlled by the powers that be, the true powers that be. In fact, the East India Trading Company is just a story in and of itself. And again, the corporate power was already there then. So here you see, for 4 centuries, the Book of Enoch was lost to Western Christianity and Judaism. That was until 1773, when Scottish explorer James Bruce brought back from Ethiopia 3 copies, in quotes, of it to France and England. Yet by the end of the 18th century, there was another copy of the Book of Enoch in Rome. In the library of Cardinal Leonardo Antonelli. This was an Ethiopic manuscript that around 1825 would be acquired by Angelo Mai for the Vatican Laboratory. Laboratory. They're doing their hybrid experiments. Sorry about that. That was a little bit of a Freudian slip there. Vatican Library, where it is currently preserved, so they say. The provenance of the manuscript has remained until now unknown through the recovery of 18th century neglected letters and documents. This article uncovers a forgotten chapter in James Bruce's biography, his adventurous journey to Rome immediately after his return from Ethiopia. He went straight to Rome, straight to the Vatican. His meeting with Pope Clement the 14th, and the fourth Enoch manuscript he donated to the Antonelli Library. Personal and political reasons led Bruce to suppress the memory of this precious gift. Interesting stuff, is it not?
Well, it's very interesting, and as I read it, and you mentioned the words Vatican and Rome, I know there's this timeline where they're going to have to divulge this information. They can't keep a hold of it forever. It has something to do with karmic stuff. But yeah, it's going to be all be coming to light. It has to.
So, when we're looking at any of these, as far as the dating goes, they're dwarfed by the Sumerian works. The Sumerian works go back like anywhere between 1900 BC and 2600 BC. And so the big thing that we see is, the angels in the book of Enoch, the angels come down, the watchers come down. It's almost like you could view them as, oh God, this is sacrilegious, horny astronauts of type. You could basically look at them in that light, the way the book kind of paints it. It's almost like they're lonely, they're lost, they're over here watching, but not allowed to get too involved, in the ongoings of humanity. And then all of a sudden they get together, make a blood pact, and swear it that they're going to come down, and they're just going to, commingle, co-marry with the most attractive of humans, and then teach them all the ways of these ancient astronauts. That's how you could take it from one sense. You could also take it, perhaps that these are energetic spirits that jump into the bodies of willing hosts and take them over, overshadow them, and because of that overshadowing, again, give birth to a race of giants. We have that Genesis 6 thing going on again. What's interesting, though, is that when we look at the Sumerian works, for instance, the Sumerian gods were thought to reside in their own temples, and they were, when we look at the sacrifices were to the gods. The gods ate first, basically. And as we talked about before, they sure love the smell of a good roast lamb, barbecuing on the grill. And they also would have priestesses that would serve their every wish as well. And we see that tradition going on into more modern times. We see it in ancient Greece as well. We see the different oracles, like the Syllabine oracles and stuff. And then we had the Carnia, this lineage of priests there in ancient Greece that were very lecherous, to say the least. It is convoluted and twisted, but we can say the same thing about the modern church as well, with all the stuff that has come out about what goes on with the modern church as well. The Sumerian gods are depicted often with humans tied to a rope head to head, hands tied behind their backs, and led around like slaves. And so all very, very interesting to look at and to take in and try to figure, what is the truth behind all of this?
I don't know, and then you can look at all the movies and TV shows that depict humans, working as slaves, underground or maybe outer space, or, kind of being traded back and forth as energetic commodities.
So King James, right? We have the King James Bible, the most famous version of the Bible. And a lot of these links are no longer working. They've been removed. They've been blocked. They don't want you seeing this. Some of these still work. And we've talked about this before. King James was the head of Masonic lodges. He was the founder of Masonic lodges. He was a Freemason and insider's insider. So there again, the infiltration of our religious lines of thinking or traditions by the insiders, by these secret societies that are giving us our belief systems. And so many people will say, I don't trust anything that's not a King James Bible. Well, you trust the secret societies then, don't you?
Yeah, they trust them completely.
Because they've been brought up that way. You know, when we look at, jump over here, Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, and Brigham Young, you know, these guys were, again, they were in the secret societies. They were Freemasons. And, you know, this goes way back. And Merovingians is a very interesting thing as well, as is the Knights Templar. You know, this is fascinating stuff to delve into. Charles Darwin giving you a little horn action there, right? And this again, you see people that are half awake. You know, Charles Darwin created the theory of evolution. He was also a high-level Freemason. Yes, he was. 33rd. Meaning he quietly worshipped Lucifer. No, you're not getting it. You're not getting it. That's all control system. That is all part of the control system. You know, there's so many catches to get you. If you get to a point where you recognize, oh wow, okay, Charles Darwin was a 33rd degree Freemason. You know, maybe I shouldn't believe in maybe I shouldn't believe in evolution. People throw out the whole evolution thing, but there is evolution. Not necessarily that Darwinian evolution is giving us the truth. Again, they take the truth and they distort it just enough to get us going down a dead end.
Well, yeah, and to benefit them. So we're always on their side in an energetic, and our soul is on their side doing their will.
And so here this person is equating Lucifer and Satan. Again, Satan is the adversary. Lucifer is the light bringer. There's only one spot in the entire Bible where it mentions Lucifer, and that's only in one version. Again, you know, so this is where things get so distorted and people latch onto it and just say, okay, now I got the truth. But no, you're still missing the point. You know, again, all these systems are created. So you get past one particular belief system, and then there's another false belief system in place right past it to catch you. Then maybe you get past that one, then there's another, and then another, and then another. And it's the way that things are put together. Charles Taze Russell, how many times are the world going to end? Well, I mean, the Jehovah Witnesses, this is the founder. Yeah, he's a Freemason as well. He's part of that secret society as well. Again, you have all these different branches trying to catch minds and entrap them in a dead end.
Yeah, it is a net, so to speak.
It is. It's one dead end after another. And you see here the East India Company and its role in ruling India. And, you know, it is the case. Again, this is, that group whose name begins with an I, ends with an I, has U, L's, and M in it, and an N. You know what we're talking about. And, of course, they rule through the aristocracy. And so we go back to the earliest legends. Where does kingship come from? Well, it comes from on high. It's given to us from the heavens. But is it given to us from the higher dimensions? Is kingship like this given to us from 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th density? No. But is it given to us by maybe some beings that literally did come out of the heavens? That could be. And perhaps their bloodlines are still the ones that are controlling things.
Right. It's all about the control. And that's really important for this awakening that we're going through, is understanding that we're being controlled. So everything we read, especially if they require it, you know, for you to go to at a very young age to start learning, these are the things we really need to think about.
Yeah, it is so convoluted again. And here you see Swedes, merchants, Freemasons, and East India Company agents in 18th century East London. They've infiltrated everything. And when I was studying the Vedic line of thinking and seeing how the Brahmin class was starting to dominate and take over control of everything from a religious standpoint, at the same time, that was going on over in the quote-unquote Holy Land in the Middle East with, again, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees taking control over things and dominating and telling people what version you're going to believe. And it's the same thing happened in India too. And then you have, this going on. Again, did the British Empire ever end, or was it really an extension of the Holy Roman Empire, which was an extension of the Roman Empire, which was an extension that was given to us from the Sumerians, from the Anunnaki themselves, and has morphed over into the USA being involved in over 90% of the countries militarily, as we've seen. And then now they want to just ship it all over and have their central locale be in China. It's just an extension of what has gone on for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm. And, the truth is going to unravel itself. It's going to show us. We just need to be open-minded and ready to receive the information and patient.
When you look at all these different churches, for instance, the leaders of the churches intertwined with the merchants and the bankers. The
MFers, money funders.
Yes, controlling us through our religious beliefs. We'll give you 30,000 different ones to pick from. It's okay. Ultimately, we're going to control you.
Yeah, just make sure you just get this information from us.
And again, they did it to India too, as well as all around the globe. We look at Buddhism, and Buddhism was changed. We look at, every different system out there. Anything that's going to be big and powerful, they will infiltrate and they will subvert.
And they'll twist and they'll make it so that they're at the advantage.
Yeah. It's just incredible how deep and under control they have this. It's just amazing. I'm not going to go into too much depth with this, but it just shows the depth of the infiltration through the banking system, through that corporate identity. And most people know USA has an INC after it. Some say that is gone. I want to see the proof. I haven't seen any real proof. If you want to get down to it, we haven't seen the proof yet. Maybe it is gone. Maybe it is burning, so to speak. And maybe that will come to a climax in the next few months, or maybe in the next 4 years. We have to see, and I know this video is going to get a ton of comments on each side if people are allowed to actually see it. But this is part of everything that's going on. Of course, we have the Grand Lodge of India. And when you look at the people that have been involved, big names, even people that, some people might view as satanic New Agers, Vivekananda and others, Nehru, Vivekananda, Tata, they're all Freemasons. Again, there's this infiltration to control our minds.
Yeah, it's very important that they continue to control our minds too. If we were to understand how to heal ourselves, heal our traumas, and unleash the brain, they wouldn't have anything to hold over us anymore.
So you have all these different beings, the ones that descended to Mount Hermon, which is also where Christ's foot is supposed to land in the second coming, if you take it in a literal way. They make a pact, they come down, and then they teach humanity all sorts of magics, but they also teach farming, they teach agriculture, they teach how to put on makeup. They teach all sorts of different things to humanity. Again, I have to ask you, because if we look at it logically, who controls this world? Well, biblically, it's Satan. It's the adversary of humanity. Well, in the book of Enoch, it says that these beings are locked away until the end times. But it doesn't look like our history is full of light and bliss. It's nothing but nonstop wars and conquest. And in the same structure as far back as we go, we see nothing but wars and conquests. We talked about Constantine the Great, who gave us, really, he was the foundational person for giving us the modern Bible. it's selecting which ones are going to go in there through his different councils, starting with Nicaea in 325 AD. And, again, this is a man that slaughtered whole villages, put to death countless people, including his own wife, boiling her in oil, and his son. Is this guy Christ-like? No. Look at the history. The system's been in place. So where's the evidence that these fallen angels have been put away in Constantine's time? There's none. They haven't been put away. That's not the case at all. So who's been put away? Well, when you look to the Hopi, for instance, and the Hopi believe that after we get through these times, what's going to happen is we're going to, look up to the skies and we're going to witness the return of those that helped to create the world in this time period, and the ones that taught us in the first place. So it's interesting that to the Hopi, the ones that teach us all these things are the good guys. They're not around now. The dark ones are here. And again, if the book of Enoch is right, well, where's the evidence that the fallen angels have been locked up 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago? I don't see any evidence of that as well. But yet, the Hopis say that when these times are done, the benevolent star brothers and sisters are going to return and help us to rebuild society. And, Mother Shipton's legend, same thing. Once the times are done, a silver serpent, a ship, comes, lands on the ground, and men of strange continents, men of strange looks come out, and they help us to rebuild society again. And if we get into the Vedic point of view on things as well, we see that at one time the benevolent beings like Rama and Krishna, Radhe and Sita and Hanuman and all these were actually on Earth. And when Krishna left, around 3104 BC, over 5,000 years ago, that's when the Dark Age began. When the benevolent ones left, the Dark Age began. Cindy, in her visions and contacts with the guides, I asked her, I said, before the draconian influence on the planet was here, who was here? And you had seen that there were benevolent beings that you said were of a particular color.
Well, yeah, the blue people were here, and they were very peaceful, helping, guiding humanity along their own path, helping humanity evolve on their own, in their own way.
Then when we go to the Emerald Tablet of Thoth, and we see that there was this doorway that was opened in Atlantean times, to let in a great evil, a reptilian shape-shifting evil, very much as David Icke has talked about, that will basically take people over and devour their souls. That has never been locked up since those times. That has been free on this earth and controlling the leadership of this planet.
That's right. So, I mean, these are things that once you start to find out, you're able to start opening your eyes further and further and realizing that, hey, everything I've been taught, everything that I think I know isn't true. I need to go back and do this. And some people actually don't want to. I've actually talked to people and I've showed them certain truths, and they look at it and they say, that's just too much work for me to reprocess. And that's a true story, so I just do my own work. I give my own experiences, and hopefully, one person at a time will open up to the truth and free themselves too.
And it's interesting too that, in the Emerald Tablet, it even says that in the latter times, as we go into this age, these reptilian energies will lose their ability to hold their form. And, Cindy said to me a couple days ago or yesterday, you were saying, I wonder if that has anything to do with why we have MASKs on.
Right. Why I think there's several different reasons for the mouth coverings, and that was presented to me where they might not be able to hold their shape. So yeah, maybe that's why there's on the news media, these anchors, even though they're kind of by themselves, they're wearing these big masks.
Yeah, and we've seen some of the shapeshifting, and we've seen people that have black eyes. Like when we talk about the current leader of the land, I asked, I said, we could see the blackness in the eyes at times. And she said that basically there isn't much, if any, human left.
No, this is all just a vibrational form, and he's completely taken over.
Yeah. So again, you know, for me, I remember being so excited when I first read the Book of Enoch, maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, a long time ago, and being so excited about it. But then there were right away. I mean, there's things that again hit me as, that's incongruous, and I don't believe this paradigm. Um, the dark forces, they haven't been locked away. They're here. They've been in control. They've been in control the entire time. So it's not that they were just released now in our time. I mean, these powers to be have been here. They've helped to bring into being World War II, World War I, so many different wars all the way on down throughout history. They've helped manifest the British Empire. They've helped manifest the Roman Empire. And, everything we've seen going back to Sumeria and really going back to Atlantis, that's where the fall really was coming. And, Lemuria, I've always gotten was more of a 5D existence. And you have gotten much of the same.
Oh, very much the same. Yeah, different type of existence, different ways. And unfortunately, it was taken over and hijacked and wasn't allowed to move forward on their natural path.
So, more food for thought, and I hope there's a lot of open minds out there that will delve deeper and maybe even give some key puzzle pieces to the world. We thank you guys for being part of the family. Make sure you are subscribed. Thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Anybody that needs to make an appointment, reach us at EEARTS@protonmail.com or evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. May we keep shedding light upon all the darkness and the secrets until they shall be no more.
God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.